Hello nerds and nerdettes, welcome back to the channel where once again, believe it or not, we have a new video for you guys. Today we will be referencing the hiatus slash moving portion of my life that we just went through, very similar to that of the last video, which I can leave a link up above if you guys have not caught that. But today we will be talking about my top 5 most enjoyable reads during that period of time. I did not get to read as much as I wanted to. Not happy about this at all. I was very busy uprooting my life to another state. Would not recommend. But when I did, I absolutely devoured some incredible stories, and I would love to talk about them with you here today. But if any of these stories are books that you want me to make a focused or individual video on, then let me know down below. Making content you all want to see is very important to me, so let me know down below. And also, if you could, which I can't forget this part, hit that subscribe button and hit that thumbs up icon. It means a lot to us on the channel. It really pushes me along to keep creating these videos and keep creating content for you all to indulge and enjoy, hopefully. But with that being said, we can go ahead and jump into the top 5, but we're going to talk about a honorable mention before we even get into the list. And our honorable mention is none other than Berserk Deluxe Edition Volume 14. I don't need to say it because I've probably said it in all of my other videos, but Berserk is my favorite thing that I've ever read in any medium, whether it's comic books, manga, picture books, novels, whatever it may be. This is my favorite story that I've ever digested, and it has truly changed me as an individual. Kentaro Miura has touched me on a personal level with his storytelling, and I highly implore anybody that is an indulger in comic books, manga, novels, films, whatever it may be, to give Berserk a chance, because it is some incredibly life-changing storytelling that takes place throughout this incredible series. We did lose Kentaro Miura, which hurt a lot of the fan base a lot, and this is actually the volume that collects his last works, volumes 40 and 41, and kind of wraps up his tenure on the story, unfortunately. It does also have the handbook, which expands the lore and world that Kentaro Miura has built throughout this series, which is a very interesting read if you want to expand that knowledge. But truly a master world builder, storyteller, and artist. This has absolutely every itch you could need scratched when it comes to stories and comic books and the medium of manga and comics. So go ahead, check it out if you haven't. And honestly, the only reason it's an honorable mention is because it deserves its own individual video, so I didn't want to include it in the list, even though here I am gushing about it anyway. But that does wrap up the honorable mention, so let's go ahead and start the list with number 5. Coming in at the number 5 spot is, very surprisingly so, Ice Cream Man Sunday Edition Volume 2. Now, the reason I say this is a surprising pick for me, because I actually did not enjoy Ice Cream Man Sunday Edition Volume 1. I felt it lacked direction for me as a reader. I'm not a huge fan of the anthology style of stories, which is exactly what this is. It is a horror anthology. There is some minor elements and threads that connect the stories throughout, but overall they are self-contained stories in each issue. This Sunday edition collects 12 issues, and honestly, maybe 2 of them I didn't love, but I still enjoyed. The rest of the issues I absolutely enjoyed. There was even more experimenting when it came to the storytelling elements and the incredible panels and art that they were showing us throughout these kind of disturbing and odd stories. And one is like All-Star Superman. It almost resembles that story to a T, but with its own twist. There's another story that you can read front ways and back ways, and they have 2 different meanings depending on the way that you're reading them. So that's 2 issues in one, if you ask me. Pretty good bang for your buck. But really, it is so experimental, and a lot of the stories resonated a lot more for me as a reader this time around in this particular Sunday edition. So very surprising. That's the main reason that it's on my top 5, is the Ice Cream Man series went from one that I wasn't too keen on to now it's appearing on a top 5 list for me, which is very impressive. And all the kudos to the creators on the book for changing somebody's mind and creating a fan out of somebody that wasn't a fan originally. And coming in at the number 4 spot is Ed Brubaker and Sean Phillips' Pulp, the processed edition. I want to make sure that you guys know this is the processed edition because that is one of the selling points of this particular collected edition. You're pretty much going to see the scripting and the storyboarding, the entire process of putting this story together during the first more than half of the book, which is a very interesting element when it comes to this particular edition. I very much enjoyed that half of the book, but what I enjoyed even more was the story. I went into this book thinking that I was going to get a cowboy, on a horseback style of Western story, but what I got instead was a much more modernized Western with some political drama and some life lessons, and you have some elements such as bad people are still capable of good things, and make sure one's purpose is achieved in life, and what is one's purpose, and is there more to life than what we do day to day and to pay the bills and to continue our life. And it's absolutely incredible. Knocked my socks off. I've said probably a million times at this point, especially when it comes to the end half, probably the last 2, 3, maybe 4 pages really kicks it up a notch and was another part of this story that I was not expecting. I was not expecting a climax like that, and when it took place, my jaw was dropped. I was really expecting going into this to have a cowboy style of Western, and it was not that at all. There were so many lessons, such incredible art by Sean Phillips, and overall I can't recommend it enough, especially this processed edition, because the first half is so cool to see. It's an aspect of comics that we don't get to see often. Next up is Monsters. This is Barry Windsor Smith. He's the creator that we famously know for the Weapon X storyline that took place in Wolverine, or Marvel Presents, I'm sorry. This is a story or a book that took me a long while to finish. Not only is it fairly dialogue heavy because it is a very in-depth and detailed story that takes place in this book, but it is some heavy material that you're going to be reading, and I found myself very often needing a break from the darkness that is the story elements in this book. And it is absolutely incredible. The storytelling, the characters, everything that takes place and revolves around the Bailey family, and the side characters that we're introduced to, and how none of them are safe throughout this entire story, and then the mystery elements that we barely get to scratch the surface of as the story continues as well. And it is a 3-part story, which somebody pretty much said to me online before when selling me on this book. That's a 3-part story. You have horror, and then you have political suspense, and then you almost have a traumatic slice of life style of story as well throughout this entire book. And all of those elements are captured. All of those story elements are included in one singular story. And this is a story that almost pushed me to tears. I'm not the most emotional guy. I'm not the guy that's going to cry to movies and stuff like that. I've only had twice where I've really gotten emotional like that, and this was one of them. There was a scene in a old house, which we're not going to go too deep into, but if you've read it, you probably know the scene I'm talking about. And it just hits hard, and nothing about this is fast and loose. It is so thought out, so methodical, so incredible. I cannot recommend it enough, but be prepared for the darkness that you are going to be experiencing when reading. Next up at the number 2 spot is Peacemaker Tries Hard. This is a book that I feel like there was some decent buzz around when it was coming out in single issues, or at least I vaguely remember that, but it did not get nearly enough attention that it should have. This is a Black Label DC book, and it is one that actually made me laugh while reading. There is so many humorous moments throughout this book, so many ridiculous events that take place, from fighting babies to very obscure characters being explored. Don't want to get into the details of that, but it really just kicks it up a notch when it comes to the humor elements, and I really enjoyed that. And the Peacemaker TV show is very similar to this story, or this story is very similar to the Peacemaker show. I don't exactly know which one came out first, but if you do like that show, read this, and if you have read this and you liked it, watch the TV show. Peacemaker is made to look like John Cena. He talks and emotes and acts the way John Cena depicts Peacemaker as well. So if you like that character, or John Cena's interpretation of that character, then this is a story for you. There is so many obscure and odd elements to this story, but it deserves so much more hype, so much more focus. It is one of the few books, once again, that has made me actually laugh while reading, and I think you can kind of get into it without knowing who Peacemaker is, or the DC universe, or anything like that, because they do a pretty decent job of showing who these characters are, or showing what these characters are meant to be, even if they are characters you've never heard of. So I think it's very new reader friendly, and it's just a great read. I highly recommend checking it out if you haven't already. It's in a standard size hardcover. It deserves a larger format. It is an incredible story, and one I was not expecting to be as good as it was. And then coming in at the #1 spot is Blade of the Immortal Deluxe Edition Volume 9. This is right before the climax, because there's 10 volumes that collect the entire story. There's probably a term for that, but I don't know it, so I'm not even going to try to say it. But I have not talked about Blade of the Immortal nearly enough on the channel, and it is such an incredible story. It lends beautifully to a comic book reader. So those of you that are comic book fans and not necessarily manga fans, this is a great jumping on point for manga. This is very serious in tone, extremely realistic and grounded, but still has some supernatural, superpower elements to it. Very action-packed, and the art is beautiful. It's brutal, fast, loose, scratchy, but somehow makes incredible panels, incredible portraits. There is so many elements about this story that remind me of comic books. Not to mention that it was printed in these deluxe editions reading from left to right, so it reads like a comic book, so you don't have to read backwards or anything like that. But it is so cool. If you're a fan of Wolverine or Suicide Squad, or really anything, that you're going to find a character that will remind you of a character you probably know or love throughout this entire series. But this volume in particular is so great because there was a lot of impactful moments, and honestly, reading this, I felt my heart beating. I felt like I was sweating, because we had some closure on some insanely bad villains, which this book has some great villains as well. But we also got to see some reintroduction of some fan favorite characters, two of my favorite characters in particular. But it is really a good read, and I cannot wait to get into Volume 10. I am running to the shelf to start reading it and finally finish this story, because the way this ended really just, it made me want to like go out and go on a run because it got me so excited just reading what was taking place, and the closure and the characters. There was just so many parts that really scratched the itch that I needed when reading, and I cannot recommend it enough. Check it out if you haven't. Berserk, Blade of the Immortal, some of these mangas you hear a lot about. You hear a lot about them for a reason, because they are that good, and this is one of them, so check it out. And that does wrap up today's top 5. Thank you so much for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you guys, like always. I'm trying to get back into the swing of things and pumping out regular content at a regular or somewhat regular timeline throughout the weeks. So bear with me. I'm trying my best here, but I had a lot of fun with this video, a lot of fun making this video for you guys and talking about these incredible books. If you have any other lists or books that you want me to talk about, comment down below, or if you want me to focus more on any of these books, comment that as well down below. But if you are not part of the Luminerdi already, hit that subscribe button. It is an amazing community and it's growing day by day, and I would love for you all to be a part of it. Also, if you could hit that thumbs up icon, it means a lot to us. And if you could hit that bell icon and get notified anytime I put out content. But once again, thank you for watching. I appreciate each and every one of you. And of course, stay nerdy.